Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Peggy Smedley Show. Prior to joining Dell Boomi, my first guest today was a founding developer and chief architecture of IBM's WebSphere application server. If he's going to correct me, that'll be good. And he had an impressive career with IBM where he became, as you all know this, and you might not, I love this title, an IBM master inventor, and was a founding developer and chief architect of IBM's WebSphere application server. In his current role, he drives product direction and innovation. So I want you all to join me. He's looking at me right now. It is, please welcome Michael Morton, Chief Technology Officer of Dell Boomi. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Peggy. It's great to be here.
So, Michael, we're in this studio right now, and I love having you here. We have much to talk about because you know what I've been doing? I've been talking about fog, cloud computing, and all this stuff, and everybody's got a lot of things to talk about. And I was talking to you before we got on air, and you guys have a definition of all this great stuff when we talk about the Internet of Things. And correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think your definition is achieving a business outcome for device data. Do I have that right?
That's right.
So that's your definition. What the heck does it mean to all these people who are listening, and do they want to kind of understand how that's going to make them money?
Sure. So over the past few years, Boomi's been talking to many businesses and customers around IoT. Everybody seems to want to launch into talking about devices, device data. They launch right into the technology. But the one thing we had to learn, as well as talking to these customers, is let's stop talking about technology just for the moment, right? Everybody's anxious to be the geek. They want to talk about technology, connections, smog, fog, MT Connect.
Sounds like a bunch of dirty cars.
Correct. OPC UA, gateways, and everybody wants to get right into that level of the conversation. But, you know, in the beginning, we had to make a decision like, okay, this is really not the conversation we should be having. We should be having the conversation about what are you trying to do? What is the business value you're trying to achieve from the data coming from devices? Is it avoid loss of productivity? Is it increase competitiveness? Is it a new revenue generating opportunity? There's many different categories. But ultimately, because Boomi is all about helping customers integrate data between clouds and between on-premise data centers, we realized that ultimately IoT to us and everybody else really should be around helping you achieve a business outcome from that device data.
Are we doing that today? Because everybody talks about it, and we just have not progressed in IoT the way we should. And I finally think we're getting some momentum, and our company's finally getting it, because we've seen a lot of companies losing money. But with that definition, are you finally getting them to move that needle, which is maybe a good thing?
Some yes, some no. It's interesting because we find that some people, it takes a little bit to get what we mean, just to get what we mean. And then others, they just don't quite get it yet. What does it mean to achieve a business outcome? I can give you an example. Do you want me to give you an example about this?
Yeah, I definitely want examples. That's what everybody here listening wants. They want use case examples. They want to know how can I be like him? I want to be like the Joneses, but better.
Okay, I'll give you a really simple example. I have many examples, of course, that I can use through the course of this conversation, but I'll pull the first one out. So one of the conversations that we had is a cold storage transport company, for example, okay? This is what I'm going to describe as the quintessential pattern of IoT that nearly everybody wants to do. This is the simple one. So whether it be cold storage or something mechanical, is I have a problem. I want to address that problem. So let's say that I have a refrigeration issue. It could be a slow degradation, it could be fast degradation, doesn't matter. But I have a problem. What do you want to do? You want to text somebody? Do you want to send an email? Do you want to open a ticket in a customer relationship management, cloud? Yes. But that doesn't really mean that you achieved a business outcome. It just means that you let out the cavalry. You let people know. The business outcome piece of this is where people really start to understand what's the business outcome. All I did at this point was open a ticket to get the problem looked at. The business outcome's the resolution. So what happens next? I have many choices. A, Do I dispatch someone to work on maintenance to resolve the problem? Yes. Is it going to be resolved in time so that my cold storage goods survive? Are they remain compliant within the temperature? Okay, one business outcome is it's fixed and my business is whole. Another business outcome is, okay, I can't fix it in time, but can I move it to another location in the warehouse so I can save the goods? Totally different business outcome. But when we talk about business outcome, think about the complexities of trying to move millions of pounds of goods from one location to the other. I have logistics. Who's on site? Who's authorized to operate a piece of equipment? Where's the equipment? Where's the location in the warehouse? So you get it. It's the business outcome is actually getting to the end result. What? From that little bit of tiny of device data, from something that told you a temperature was off, right? It can be so simple. And then the light bulb goes off. I had a little tiny sensor that told me the temperature was dropping 1 degree every 30 minutes. That means I have a failure. But ultimately, the business outcome is save millions and millions of dollars of products and goods.
How do you get these companies to make that move from that revenue idea, revenue generation model that you just described, to understand that it's now about actual results-driven model? Because that's really what you're talking, right? There's a result-driven there. So versus thinking revenue, but you now just showed them you've seen real tangible results. That's what you just described, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. The only way I can describe it is this, is some people are just wired to see the end result. I mean, It's as simple as that. I have no magic answer. But
isn't that the way we teach our employees? I mean, businesses after businesses after businesses train their employees to go, results, we're about results, there's book after book written about that. How do you deprogram all employees to say, well, it's not about results, it's about revenue, it's about thinking differently? How do you get that kind of change?
Good. Yeah, good. So when we have talked to many businesses about this is I try to keep the conversation very simple. So one is I just say, what are you trying to do? Give it a label. Avoid loss of product, right? Then you define, what does that mean? Avoid loss of product. Then you start getting the interaction of the conversation because then they get it. We've totally pushed technology out of the way temporarily. And it's like, now, what am I trying to do for my business? It's avoid loss of product. Then we get into, well, what's the different outcomes? Can I save the product? Can I move it? Or is it ultimately catastrophic and I now have to dispose of it and file an insurance claim? Now the light bulb goes off and you notice that, with that stream that we just talked about is we didn't talk about technology, the device anymore. It's really what is the business outcome that needs to be achieved?
When you look at these business outcomes and you look at that, you gave us that one example. Are there others right now that you're seeing that are more and more? That was one. Are there others that you can give us that our listeners can hear about?
Sure. Yeah. Another one would be this. So let's talk about a construction company, for example. We really don't even think about construction, to be honest with you, but it is unbelievably...
We do. Got a lot of listeners who do. But go ahead.
It is incredible how IT-driven construction companies are becoming. And what's causing that is because of technology. So for construction business... Oh, by the way, the other thing that's really great, being in the business with Boomi about connecting clouds, connecting applications, is to learn about people's businesses. So it's to have these discussions. So in the construction business, people wouldn't normally think that it's not just the lowest bidder that wins a commercial project. It usually is a significant dependence of two factors. More, of course. I'll say two because I'm naive about this, but I'll tell you what I know. Is the bid and the safety record. And if you think for just a second about the safety record is you are a reputable company by which it will be less likely that there will be a disruption because of a safety issue in order for my project to proceed and maybe finish early. But you say to yourself, okay, where does IoT come into this? This is where things get interesting because we normally don't think about IT on the job site. But in construction, it's all about IT. And I'm not saying that because I'm an IT person. But in IoT, how they envision they'll be doing this is, how can they use technology to measure safety? There are many people on a construction site, people in different roles that are supposed to be in only certain locations on that job site with certain trades. that are authorized or trained to operate certain heavy pieces of machinery, lightweight pieces of machinery. If you're a construction company that can now prove that the right people were in the right location, doing the right job, touching the right equipment, the end result of that product of taking device data about the people, equipment, location produces a beautiful safety report now. And now you, as a construction company, are much more competitive in that landscape because you can prove your safety record.
Are we talking then about this is disruption in what we're creating on all these industries? The IoT is creating that in a different way. What are we saying that is happening? Because we're looking at different markets. You're giving us examples, but are we saying that it's because the cloud, fog, all these things are creating it of what you've just described? And we're saying, because some of these devices you're talking about, in order for that to happen, we're talking them have to be low level. We have to talk about the fog and the edge. Those have to be, because we have sensors in order to have them. They've got to be in safety. They have to be on the contractor. They've got to be right on him, because he's got to know where he is if he's on a site somewhere. So we're talking about a lot of different things. So a lot of pieces that I said in the first segment have to be, it's like a puzzle piece, have to be working together. So we're not talking about just one thing anymore. So you're kind of saying everybody's got to play nice in the sandbox together. I always use that expression here. It's not going to be just one thing. And so we are going to have this giant transformative environment in order to make this all work.
You bet. Of course. You have everything. You have the consideration that you have to do something very non-invasive on a person. It's probably not an RFID, it's probably some type of beacon. You will have gateways potentially around that job site, because you'll be managing many different levels of frequency, distance. So again, now I find myself with you talking about technology again, which is great because I love this part of it. But you're absolutely right. There is so many pieces that come together. The sensors being built for these adverse condition environments, the gateways, then how much processing are you going to do on site? How much of it are you going to do offsite in the cloud? And you're right, this is one of the challenges. It's very hard for a business to go in is, how do I put all these pieces together? There's very few vendors that do all the same thing, right? But
right.
You're right. It is very challenging to put all these technologies together.
When we look at this bigger thing, do you see businesses reshaping themselves in the way their business is being done? Do you see that they'll find that there's going to be that they're going to have to tackle business in an entirely different way now? Because that's the way you're describing it now, is how they've gone to market might be different now, is the way you're describing it as well.
Exactly, because I'm going to come right back to my favorite expression, the business outcome, right? The business outcome of introducing this technology into this landscape is improve your competitiveness.
So if they improve their competitiveness by this, when will they see those results? Because everybody now listening is saying to me, okay, this is all pie in the sky. We're talking the cloud. And are we seeing tangible results? We're going back to now results. That's what everybody's going to think. And you're going to say, no, we just don't want to see that. But it is a results driven in a different way. Yep. Because ultimately they've got to pay the bills. We've got to pay the bills, right. And we've got to see that. So if IoT is going to work and all of these things are going to work for them, because now we're talking blockchain, we're talking AI, we're talking machine learning, all these things are going to come into play. You've got to integrate the vision with all of these things. So you've got to help them kind of say, we're going to have to mesh it all together. That's what you're doing. In your kind of way of not doing, but saying the concept is, we want to help you look at this disruptive world. Yep. And tell you how it's going to be a smooth journey to get there. Oh,
yeah, I wish I could tell them it would be a 100% smooth journey.
Nothing's ever smooth, right? But
yep.
Make it easier, I guess it should be, than what they've been experiencing, because some of them don't know how to get there.
Yeah, exactly right. And the other interesting point I'll make about like being in the integration business is, we didn't really expect to try or to become experts in the low level. I mean, talking about protocols or GSM or MT Connect or OPC UA, all these different legacy modern protocols. But in order to facilitate the discussion, to get the customer to talk about either existing infrastructure or new infrastructure, we take the conversation from the point of, great, you're producing data, now what? Right? That's the point, we look is like, okay, now let's talk about what are you trying to achieve with that data?
Is that the discussion because we lack the whole interoperability and we've just been producing a boatload of data? Nothing, everything's in their own silos. Everybody's got data here, 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 and they go, I got all this data, it's awesome, but nobody knows what the heck they're doing with it.
It's a very common scenario, especially in smarter cities, by the way. There's a lot of conversations we've had with cities around infrastructure that are collecting all kinds of data, traffic signals, railroad crossings.
That's great. So glad we got all those about traffic signals.
It's great.
Wow.
Pump houses. But it's unbelievable that all the data just continually sits in a database. So,
and it gets old.
Oh, yeah. It's always get old. It's always being refreshed. It's always there. But it is only now we're starting to see this transformation of, oh, wait a minute. Boy, I can learn a lot by this data, and it doesn't have to be very difficult either, by the way. It can be very simple. So yes, there is mounds of data that exist in being produced all the time, and we'd love to have this conversation about that data.
But when you have all this data and you've been collecting it for years, but you're not doing anything, you're saying, yeah, it's getting refreshed, but you have so much of it, it's costly just to collect it and let it sit there. And that just seems to me that is a hacker's playground. I mean, you just got it sitting there and they're refreshing it, but that's like, I'm just finding a way to weasel my way in.
Well, from a security standpoint, maybe. Your first point is very valid, though. Here you have a bunch of server boxes sitting in a room, collecting and fattening up the database and just sitting there. And I can't tell you how common this is.
It's costly, but...
It's costly. Do people do it for liability? Is it because they're nervous? Is it because they have to have the data? It's something that they have that's tangible, that they own? I don't know. But you would not believe how much data. Now, of course, it'd be interesting. Think about the possibilities with that data. Yeah, it's maybe old, but let's say that a city's been collecting data for, I don't know, since they instituted a modern infrastructure. Maybe it's 20 years worth of data. To me, I see things like, how has your city grown? How's your traffic patterns changed, right? To me, I see the potential into that data as well. So whether it's old or new, there's still a lot of possibilities.
But they've been collecting it, but have they known what they're doing with it? I mean, because that can great, data for data's sake. They just have it all, and it's just there, and they're not properly managing what they're collecting. Isn't that kind of leaving them up to some problems in itself? I mean, because they just have it all, and the IT guy's there for a while, and then he leaves. New guy comes in, and he's like, well, we don't need all that, or we're going to discard some of it, or we're going to put it over here, and they don't even know where it is after a while. I mean, I don't know that they're managing it, because not all cities, and we were talking about big cities, are getting connected in some ways, but some of these smaller towns can't just change the infrastructure. Yeah. They have to upgrade. They don't have these big dollars. They don't have public and private partnerships to invest in. They've got to figure out how to do the things to make their citizens and businesses happy on kind of shoestring budgets. I mean, we're not talking what the city of Chicago can do in the city of San Francisco. Yeah. I mean, it's completely different, right?
Oh, yeah. Small municipalities are always scrapping, of course.
So aren't we, we're not comparing, we're comparing apples to oranges. They might be fruits, but we're not comparing the same things. And I think it's hard when people say connected cities, municipalities, you just said, are completely different. And is that a fair discussion if someone's listening going, yeah, that's me, that's what our problem is?
Maybe.
How do we talk to them and explain to them what they should be doing?
Oh my gosh! And now you're talking about investment in infrastructure. Yes.
Well, but isn't that a smart city discussion?
It is.
Infrastructure, because you can't have connected cars without changing the infrastructure somewhat. I mean, that's what we're talking about, and everybody has these discussions, which incredibly frustrates me because we're not really telling. I don't want to say the tales here, but it's the tail wagging the dog. I just think we're missing the mark here.
Yep. Yeah, it could be. I'll just give you my personal opinion. I have the luxury of living in a town that actually is very progressive, to be honest with you. So for me, I'm a little bit, good. I want to have the conversation because you already have a smart infrastructure. I don't have very many conversations, where they don't have a smart infrastructure, unfortunately. But yes, there's plenty of them out there. But I think, I come back to my business outcome is, okay, why do I want to be a smarter city? What is it about a smarter city? Look, many things are driven by economics. So you have to figure out, why do I want to be a smarter city? Is it because I want to attract more people to move to my city? Is it because I want to attract businesses? The answer is probably, right? Cities are businesses in themselves. So I think to myself, okay, go back to your disruption, comment. Disruption, yes, IoT it's unbelievable the impact it really is having about getting people, businesses, cities to think the power of having that data and what does it mean to the ultimate business outcome.
And when they look at that, that's a really great point, because I think if they see the power of the outcome, can cities find, or municipalities or whatever it might be, these smaller ones figure out that, look, we can do more sometimes with less if we figure out what we really want to do for our citizens. I mean, is that the key to maybe moving forward in some ways or not? Or in anything we might do, or any manufacturing facility, anything that's small that has to be competitive in what we're talking about, this transformative world that we're in right now?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I mean, isn't that what we have to do? I mean, how do you stay in business? Otherwise, you're going to be out of business. I mean, because you can't not compete. You cannot move to IoT. So it's kind of like you got to jump in. You put your toe in, but then you got to put your foot in, then you got to put your whole body in. But you got to do it, because if you don't, you're not going to be in the market at all. I mean, so you've got to figure out how to be competitive, and you got to look at these things, right?
You have to, yeah. You have to be exposed to these things. There are so many IoT conferences now. I mean, there's a Smart City Connect coming up in Kansas City at the end of this month. It's opportunities like that I would encourage any town leaders are listening to this call, go and start learning. Learn what's possible. I mean, a lot of people don't even know what's really possible, but go learn from others what's possible, because the interesting thing I find about smart cities, of all the industries that we talk about, it seems that smart cities is the most cooperative in teaching someone else what they're doing. It's true. I really find that, yes, the landscape's competitive, whether it be construction or manufacturing, but when it comes to towns, there's just something different about talking to a town that everybody seems to be more willing to share their experiences. And I would encourage people to go to a conference.
The US Ignite is what you're talking about, what they're doing there. And it's really interesting for what they've done, because there's several cities coming together and sharing their thoughts, which I think is really interesting, because they've been doing this for the past several years. And what's interesting is you're stimulating new opportunities, new business relationships and things like that. Yep. Talk more about that, because I think that we talked about it in cities, but what have you seen in other areas? Because you've talked about what's happening, because I think we're seeing just in general right now this opportunities, what you've done at Dell Boomi right now. I mean, you guys have grown exponentially, I think, in some ways. Maybe that's an extreme, but you've grown very fast in being able to talk and walk into companies who just didn't think that they could see success this way.
Yeah, correct.
And how has that happened? Just by making them see the other side of what's happening in the marketplace?
It's a little bit of everything. I mean, one is just to get people to think about, what is possible. And drawing from our own experiences. The interesting thing in the beginning, let's say 2 years ago, a customer would come to us and want to talk about IoT, but they were asking because they wanted to learn from us. So then we started seeing this trend that it was them wanting to get learn experiences out of us. But now over the next, let's say the past 24 months, things have changed so significantly that now our conversations are with a real IoT leader in that business. 2 years ago, there was no one that was actually even in their title had IoT. Now we're 24 months later. You have many different IoT clouds. We have customers that are building their own IoT cloud because they see it's strategic to their business to build their own IoT cloud. And now the conversations we have is an IoT leader within that business that has the responsibility to drive an IoT an IoT strategy for their business. I mean, by which they're responsible for defining what's their business outcomes, what's the return on investment, how are they going to get started, what technologies are they going to bring in, and then ultimately what clouds and applications do they need to integrate with.
As we see this, as we've talked about cloud and fog and edge and mist and all the different terminologies that come to play, do you think that we're going to have such a transition of all of these technologies that with what we're doing now, And now what we talk about is actually the hardware and software coming together and having to actually work together, that we're going to have even more disruption going forward. Do you think it's constantly always going to be disruption?
For quite some time, yeah, it is.
And so does that make it harder for a company to make a real decision about what to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the technologies, we're in this wave right now where it's an explosion of everything. I kind of feel it's like the same way maybe cloud used to be, but now everything's exploding. You have, all these connected devices, residential. You have connected devices in commercial. You have, many different companies producing gateways. You have promotion of fog. It's the market is just absolutely saturated with technology now, which I'm okay with, right? But eventually it will settle. I mean, eventually it will settle. That's my prediction anyways.
Well, Michael, we're out of time. Quickly, tell our listeners where they can go to learn more about Dell Boomi.
Yeah, go to www.boomi.com. You can read all about videos, look at our website, contact us, get a free trial. You can get a free trial of Boomi, and then give it a shot.
Well, Michael, I enjoyed spending time with you. Michael Morton, the CTO and Vice President, thank you so much for coming in our studio and spending time with us today.
Thanks, Peggy.
All right, well, listeners, we're out of time for this segment, but you can go up. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And I always like to tell you, go get that cup of coffee. We've got still more to come. And check out connectedworld.com. You can read about the article on fog. You can read our blogs. And check out the PeggySmedleyShow.com. As always, this is the Peggy Smedley Show, the podcasting voice of IoT and relevant technology. And remember, with great technology comes great responsibility. We'll be right back right after this commercial break.